It's Mark and Pete.
Hello and welcome to the show. More colourful conversations with Mark and Pete. This week's topic is immigration. Open or closed door policy. So, it's been very clear in the media today and throughout the week that the issue and debate over immigration into the United Kingdom is really fueling a lot of resentment and political angst amongst all the parties and indeed the British public. And this partly is for the fact that there is a huge attraction to the British economy where businesses can recruit from a continental marketplace. Ministers themselves, of course, have been restricted by EU policy, but they really have no power to stop the freedom of movement to work inside this country. Now, as the British economy grows faster than other parts of Europe, workers will continue to arrive, and the overall net migration targets move further and further out of reach. And just to illustrate a point, that in a census that was done in 2011, it was noted that the percentage of the total population of foreign-born people reached a staggering 11.9% of the overall UK population. That is an alarming figure. So there is a lot of debate around this. And so I've got with me today Pete. So Pete, what is your view on the state of immigration in the United Kingdom?
Well, I have always thought that people coming into the country from abroad have a lot to offer. And indeed, having lived in a part of London for some years where there were different waves of immigration into Britain had left different communities of people from abroad living there, I found it a fascinating culture, and the people from these different countries had a lot to offer and a lot to contribute. But actually more than that, as a church leader, I found that what I could do was effectively be engaged in overseas mission without all that messing about with actually going overseas, because all the people have been brought to my doorstep. So I have always thought that it's wonderful having so many people coming to our shores and coming and contributing to society, and then also being able to relate to them, being able to talk to them, being able to share my faith with them. But just recently, I found that it's been a problem. And for me, I know other people and maybe in other areas have found it a problem before or at different times. But just recently, I started to find it a problem because the numbers, the sheer weight of numbers of people coming in, particularly from European countries, meant that the culture of the area changed. And it wasn't that meant our culture is superior to that culture. What it meant was, and so though I think that it's bad, it's not that. What it meant was, and this is my reaction to the recent sudden increase in the numbers of immigration. It's that once you have an outside culture coming in large enough weight, because large enough numbers of people come, you make not lots of different cultures, but there'll be no culture, no overriding culture. In other words, you take away the certainties, the things that people were sure of in the way they should behave to each other, attitudes to what's right and what's wrong in interacting with each other, such that no one knows what's going on. It's very unsettling for the people who already live there, but whether they were immigrants or not, and for the people coming in. And you get a breakdown in trust of authorities because they don't appear to be understanding you if you're an immigrant, because they don't. And then you get, with that breakdown, you get a breakdown of of people respecting the law, and you end up with a breakdown in society. And things were starting to go the way. I've moved away from that area of London, but that wasn't why, but I noticed that up until I left a couple of months ago, that the sheer weight of numbers is a problem, which I find personally a great problem, because I think immigration in itself is a good thing.
Yes. Well, one point to note here is that the Home Office has issued some alarming statistics recently. So I'll give you a couple of examples.
Mm-hmm.
There were 54,257 asylum applications in September 2014. Now, that was an increase of 2% compared to the previous 12 months back in September 2013. So just one point of measure. But also, interestingly enough, there were actually at the year ending September 2014, there was 6% more work-related visas granted. So again, this point about why people are wanting to come into the country, are they coming here for asylum or are they coming here to work? And so really, again, the debate over, is it something that we should really be having metrics on specific areas, i.e. is it just purely about working, or is it to bring cultural integration and other opportunities for the country to utilize skills and embrace culture? Should we really fear culture? So I just thought, well, what we will do is just to sort of open up a little bit more of the debate is sort of highlight this with a pointed political poem.
A poem?
A poem,
Did you
yes.
say a poem?
I thought that this would sort of set the scene, because as we know that there are different people who have different views on this. So this is an amusing take on it. But the poem is entitled "The Three Little Prigs: The Grim Tale of Immigration." Once upon a time, there were three little prigs, selfish politicians squeaking me, 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 with a deep sense of dread where porkies are told, far, far abroad, with cries of wee, wee, wee. Then the furry foreign wolf soon came along and knocked on the door with a simple working song. Little prig, let me come in, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. One little prig, from not so long ago, came from the house of Jolly Jack Straw. He wouldn't pull his drawbridge down, so the wolf remained poor. But the angry wolf lashed a lambasting tongue and knocked with snarls until his claws all stung. Little prig, let me come in, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. Another little prig from not so long ago made hay from the house of Theresa May. She wouldn't let the wolf earn all the bacon, so the whimpering beast slipped away. But the fight grew stronger, and wolves came for more, knocking on the borders of the big bad door. Little prig, let us come and work, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. The next little prig grunts like any official oik, whinging at foreign folk as the hard party liner, like the trading houses made of bricks, Brazil, Russia, India, and all of Great China. But the wolves and their faces frothing and long knocked on the door crying, "Remember Hong Kong!" Little prig, are you completely insane? Not by the hair on your chinny chow mein. Then we'll huff and we'll pole and we'll ballot your house down. The clothes on their backs soon rotted away and bore a fine fluffy flock of lonely lost sheep. So the prigs grasped their crooks and began to shepherd lambs to the slaughter whose pay is so cheap. The innocent creatures grazed inside the house. Alas, this furry tale ended with a dark moral addendum. They all fell fast into the political melting pot, bleating, "Let's all vote for a national referendum." So then, Pete, what does the Bible say about immigration?
After that, I think we'll turn to the Bible. Well, the Bible does cover the idea of foreigners coming into your country quite a lot. I mean, the history of the people of Israel in the Old Testament was one in which a time of living in other countries featured largely during the exile in Babylon, which was in a period during which a lot of the Old Testament was collated together, and of course longer ago when they were slaves in Egypt and escaped through the Red Sea under the leadership of Moses. Now, so that sort of idea, the idea that you were once foreigners in another land and had to trust God and expected to be treated well, was part of the whole idea, the milieu, the thinking of the Old Testament. And you find throughout the Old Testament and breaking through into the New Testament in a different way, the idea that you must treat foreigners well because you were foreigners in another land and the Lord looked after you there. So that idea breaks through into the New Testament when it says that, well, really what you should do is not only treat foreigners well, but go into other lands and tell them the good news about Jesus and the healing that faith in him can bring. In other words, go and be good to foreigners in their own land. That's it sort of becomes the missionary idea of going and helping people in other countries. But the verse that I was going to read was one that sort of summarizes that from the law, from Leviticus. The reference is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 34. And it says this: "The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God." And the "I am the Lord your God" bit is just emphasizing that God's authority is behind this. You must treat foreigners the same as the native born. And I think this speaks very strongly to the current situation and to a particular government policy. Sometimes it's said that you shouldn't put religion and politics together. Of course, this whole podcast is an internet radio show is about doing exactly that. So I guess we can do it. And one of the things that you notice is the Bible has a lot to say about very specific things that happen in society and culture. There were not just laws, but encouragements to do things. Like in this case, there's an encouragement to treat people who are not like you well. Yeah. In fact, there's a commandment here. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as if they were born there. And when I talked briefly about immigration right at the top of the show, I was saying how I felt that people coming into the country had a lot to offer, and I was in favor of immigration, but then said there were too many people coming in. Sort of, it was the rate of people coming in which was causing problems. But I still think that if you allow people to come here, it's not their fault. If you've got the rules wrong about how many you let in, that's your fault, not their fault for coming. I mean, if someone comes here because even if it's just to make money and they think, well, the benefit system is good there, then they came on that understanding. If they no, you must change. It's up to us in our country to change the laws now. So I believe that in the UK, as you know, Mark, we've got this policy being mooted at the moment by the current government, saying that they're going to treat foreigners coming to work differently from native born by restricting benefits. You have to be in the country and work for a certain amount of time. I think it's talking about something like 5 months or something. I can't remember the exact time, but there's an argument about it anyway, so it may change. But having to wait a certain amount of time before getting benefits if you're not working. But also, there's benefits that you get when you're in work if it's a low-paid job, tax breaks, and also money, for example, for rent and things like that. So if you do that, if you treat people who come into the country differently than the people living in the country, when that was your decision to let them in the first place, then I believe you're going against the word of God, and what you're doing is wrong. So, and ask me, what does the Bible say about this? The Bible says fairness is important. You must treat people the same, whether they're foreigners or whether they were born here, is irrelevant. It's not saying that you have to let everyone in, but what it is saying is if you let them in, then you've got to treat them well.
Yes. Well, interestingly, I mean, obviously the poem took a light-hearted view, but this principle of will huff and will puff and will blow your house down, I mean, whether people will scream, let me in, let me in, the fact is that this isn't a new debate, because in the 1950s here in the UK, the government of the day decided to actually let people come in for specific purposes. So there was very much a need for skills and for support, where they allowed people from certain regions like the West Indies to come in to this country and work and reside. And that obviously brought a lot of debate. Was it right that they could come in? But at the same time, that opened up what we have seen throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s and onwards, where more and more people have come in. But statistically, I think this is the key, is that actually it's the sheer volume. And I think that one of the things that we also need to step back here is that actually there is a bigger picture, because at the moment people are just simply saying, well, we can't allow people to come in and take the resources of the country. Well, my argument on this is that basically no island can be an island in a globalized market. Essentially, that no island can be self-sufficient alone. As we know, with the way that the world is going, and in a positive way, that there is better integration. More companies, for example, are being more global in their outlook. So therefore, governments need to also take that on board. So that's not to say that you just simply open the back door to allow people to come in without offering a service or without offering something of value. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that there may be some shortage of skills, whether that's in nursing or whether that's in education or whether that's in business, and really sort of manage it more holistically, rather than just be too bogged down with the short-term problem that we have, which appears to be focused around our relationship with the EU, which appreciative has to be addressed, but isn't necessarily the longer-term issue.
Yes, I mean, there is a problem with the relationship with the EU. Now, the different parties in Britain take slightly different views on it. The Conservative Party, which is the one leading in the government, even though they are in coalition with the Liberal Democrats, as it draws closer to an election, it's more that the Conservative Party seems to be having more of a free hand. But anyway, their view on it is that we should try and renegotiate our arrangements, the arrangements with Europe. And I use the word arrangements because, of course, there has been no talk of an actual treaty change. And for those, a lot of our listeners are abroad, are not in Britain. The relationship of Britain with the EU is one that's in place through a treaty which the government of Britain has agreed to. Now, there's argument in Britain saying, well, there hasn't been a proper referendum on it, so what do people as a whole think? But the government of Britain has agreed to certain treaties, and they would need to be changed to change how we treat people coming from EU countries coming in.
Well, just on that point, the UKIP MEP, Stephen Wolfe, said that the government of today was not listening to the people. He said that the levels of immigration were driving down wages and causing overcrowding at schools. Now, that opens up another debate as to whether that is true or not. But clearly UKIP have a standpoint, and they are holding a political line, and that is something that I think is capturing the, if you like, the media attention, and that seems to be one of the main drivers around immigration. But it is something which is important, but isn't necessarily the bigger picture.
No, I think that what's happened with the rise of UKIP, which is, of course, the UK Independence Party, so it's set up to try and break away from Europe, to be independent from Europe. But what they've done in driving the debate on immigration is to get the other political parties to talk about it. There was a fear of talking about it because it had become treated as if you were talking against the people coming in or against their cultures if you wanted to talk about immigration at all. And that seems to have been now broken through the barrier of not wanting to talk about it at all. But they've either misunderstood and misframed the debate. This is the other main political parties in Britain, as well as UKIP, they've either misunderstood it or deliberately misframed it, put it in a different way than it really is. By addressing the wrong area. Much as I said, as I was talking about that passage from Leviticus and saying, no, if people come here, you should treat them fairly. Well, the government of the day, being unable to change its policy on open door movements, open borders with Europe, has had to come up with other ways of trying to stop immigration from Europe or to reduce it. And the only way they can do it is to try and make it unattractive to come here, which which is not a great idea. It's, you don't want to come here because it's awful. And so they did have a poster campaign saying it's not showing how bad it was to live in Britain, and then they had another poster campaign telling people to go home if they were literally, big posters saying that they had to go home, travelling around on those sort of lorries with a big poster on the back, and they had them driving around certain areas. Just very offensive, because there are plenty of, the majority of people who've migrated into the country have come here perfectly legally. So, and then this latest thing about taking away benefits is another misconstruing of it. That isn't the problem. The problem is control of the borders. So either they're ignorant or they're lying. That's what I'm saying.
Interestingly enough, just about control of the borders, I don't know whether you're aware, but again, Home Office statistics state that, interestingly, those people refused entry rose by 10%. There was a staggering figure alone, and this is just in September of 2014. So 17,587 people were actually refused entry, as opposed to the previous year, which was 16,012. Right. So again, there has been a clampdown. Now that's a question of whether it's just simply the sheer volume of people applying, or whether it's just a policy that's been a little bit more strict. But I guess my take is that you mentioned before about the attraction to come to the country. There's a number of reasons why it will be attractive. One of which is education. We are seen as a great source of with our education establishments, etc. Now, I'm going to ask you a question here. Is that there are a number of different nationalities from all corners of the world where students. And again, this is about investing for the future as part of Britain's contribution to the global well-being. Where would you say were the students mainly coming from? So I'm going to ask you for, if you like.
Okay, this is a quiz, right? Great. Okay. So
let's just to qualify it. There's a list that's been issued in September 2014 of the top 10 nationalities granted student visas. So they could come in and be educated, and there's a list. There's a number one, and so on. It ranks down. But where do you think that the number one country is, or where most students are coming from?
Okay, I think I've got it. Okay, I'm going to say the number one country for permits for students to come here is China.
Well, that's incredible. Yes, it is China, but not too much ahead of the number two country.
Incredible, because I got it right. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, yes, China. Yes, so that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's a completely different culture.
Well, it is, but also it does reflect the point that, of course, that's an emerging nation. And, of course, with the quest, that I know that China has got some issues, but the fact is that they are looking at things more globally. They are trying to change. They clearly see this country as an important trading nation, but at the same time, they are also looking to the future.
No, I
want to be able to obviously educate their workers in a positive way across all subjects. But just to clarify, where do you think is the second source?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I'd finished the quiz there. Right. Okay. The second most. That's tricky. Hmm. You see, I'm tempted to go to the Far East again and say Japan or something like that. But yeah, but we could be talking about the other side of the world. No, I'm going to go for Japan.
Well, it's actually Russia, and that's
Oh,
quite remarkable.
oh,
Yes,
okay.
Russia.
I should have gone for that. Yeah, I'm kicking myself.
So, although obviously in the league
it.
table they might, in many other ways, be number one on the list, but no, they are number two there. But the fact is again, as we've sort of seen in other walks of life, Russia has taken a great interest in expanding its borders, particularly with Europe. Now, I know that there are obvious political challenges, as we've seen in recent times, but on the subject of immigration, clearly a lot of students value coming to Britain to be educated and to go back into society, whether that's here in Britain or back into the commercial world.
Now, what I would say on that is that having these people coming here as students is a good thing, and it's good from their point of view, from our point of view, from our university's point of view, and from generally from the cities in which they place themselves. It's a good thing. Because, as you see, this sort of temporary migration doesn't have the negative side of immigration. I mean, I've been using immigration and migration sort of as if they were the same thing, but I guess really a migrant is someone who comes into a country and then leaves again, whereas an immigrant comes and stays. So this sort of migrant attitude doesn't diminish the country they come from, because they go back, and it adds to the country they come to, because they bring their expertise, they bring their culture, they bring different things into the country and have a positive impact. But they don't then cause problems by taking the skills out of their home country, which you have with immigration. If you have, well, perhaps we're not talking about that with Russia and China, but if you have from poorer countries people coming to a richer country because maybe training there but then staying, then what you have is a problem of what used to be called the brain drain. People moving to another country, and then the home country is losing out on those people with skills and abilities. And so, you know, when we here talk about localism, we're in favour. We mean local everywhere. We're not saying let's just care about the UK, but each locality, let's care about that and the people there. You know, this movement into different areas is a problem. And then if people come and stay in a country, and there are large numbers of them, then what you can end up with is like a sort of a bit of their country there. Now, that has happened with Chinese immigrants in places like Chinatown, which you have places called Chinatown in different large cities in Britain and across the world, I think, in which the Chinese culture is kept alive. You know, as though it's like you're walking into China. The same is true of different countries. People all live together and keep their culture alive, don't even learn the English language. And that can cause problems, because when you have a culture, when you have the main culture, as I was saying right at the start of the show, talking about how if the main culture of a place is weakened because there's too much of another culture there, then what you end up with is a lessening of all of it, of what the fabric of society. And because it's sort of a vague, as I hear myself using the term fabric of society, it seems like a vague thing, something difficult to describe, but that it is. But it doesn't mean that it's something that's not important. It is very important. That the glue that holds us together as a society is very important, and it controls your behaviour. I was thinking the other day. I live in a terraced house in a row where I've got there's lots of doors all the way along here, and they're not especially secure doors. You know, if you were of a mindset, you know, and this is not talking about any particular culture. I'm just saying this is an illustration of how culture controls us. No one comes through the door. And I've even, because he doesn't shut very well, accidentally left the door open all day when I went out. And no one came in. Why don't people just go into your houses and take stuff? People do occasionally, but they do it under the cover of night because they know it's wrong. It's social convention, isn't it? Or people know it's wrong. It's one of the two. And that what you know is right and wrong, and what you and your social conventions come from the culture. So if that's weakened, then you end up with a breakdown in law and order, and that is what happens. You've seen examples of it. For example, in Russia recently, as the Communist Party's grip on that society fell away, then what happened was the controlling culture was weakened, and suddenly you had the mafia and outlaws taking over the country for their own ends. There were those who would argue that even the politicians are of that ilk, but of course I wouldn't possibly
comment.
Couldn't possibly comment. That's the word.
Well, with that point, that certainly opened the door to encourage our listeners to get involved in this debate. What do you think about immigration, either in your country or in Britain? Should there be a more stricter closed-door policy or more of an open-door policy? So join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.